Hey, it's Cal Ewing here, and in today's video, we are going to talk about how to look at a tape of non-performing mortgage notes that you might be wanting to invest in and determining what's going to happen or what could potentially happen if you had to foreclose on the borrower if you bought a non-performing note. Okay. And typically, when you're looking at a foreclosure, there's kind of two baskets that I would put different notes in. The one basket is where there's equity. So the property is worth quite a bit more than what the borrower owes on the note. Okay. And then there's the other basket of notes where there isn't a lot of equity. So that means that the property value is very close to what the borrower owes on the mortgage note and total payoff, including all the fees, back payments, escrow, that's tax and insurance escrow that they owe. That total amount that's owing to that note holder, to that lender that the borrower owes, that's going to be close to the property value or even maybe above what the property's worth. Okay. And in those two situations, if you were to buy that note and foreclose, you're going to get two very different outcomes. Okay. So in one example where there's a lot of equity, when you foreclose on that borrower and sell the house off, it's probably going to get sold at the auction. Okay. And so you're just going to get paid out the amount that that borrower owes. Okay. But on the other case where the borrower owes quite a bit more than the property value or very similar to the property value, in that case, you're probably not going to get anyone that's going to want to overpay for the house at the auction. And so no one's going to bid on that property. And so when that happens, the ownership of the property goes to the lender. Okay. So if you own that note and you foreclose and no one bids, now that property is yours. Okay. So I've got two examples here from a tape that I was looking at recently to kind of prove this with real numbers and real properties. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. So let's talk about the very first example where the borrower's got quite a bit of equity, meaning that the property's worth more than what they owe on the note. Okay, so here's one in Coral Springs, Florida. The borrower hadn't been paying for, can't remember how many months, but it was quite a few months. It's somewhere between 6 months and 18 months where they haven't made a payment. And the note holder, the bank or whatever that owns the note, they've already started the foreclosure process. Okay. So in this case, if I were to buy this note, I would probably continue on foreclosing and go through that process. And so what would that look like? Well, in this particular property here, it's worth 450,000 as is in its current condition. Okay. And the borrower owes, the total legal loan balance is 330, basically 331. Okay. So that includes, like I said, missed payments, late fees, escrow fees that haven't been paid for taxes and property insurance, et cetera. So the total amount owing to the lender on this note is basically 331. Okay. So you can see here, when you're looking at this, there's quite a bit of equity there. There's over $100,000 in equity. So what that means for us is if we were to buy this note and foreclose and it goes to the auction, well, we can assume that the people that are there at the auctions that are bidding on properties, they're probably real estate investors or people looking for a deal, right? So I'm going to make the assumption right off the bat that this thing is going to sell at the auction for, let's say, 80 cents on the dollar, maybe 70, maybe 80 cents on the dollar. Depends how competitive that market is. But I'm not going to assume that whoever buys this at the auction is going to pay full market value for the property. Okay. They might, which would be great, but I'm going to assume that they're going to pay, let's just say 80 cents on the dollar. So I'm going to assume that they're going to pay 360,000 to buy this property at the foreclosure auction. So it's going to sell for 360. Okay. Now, since if I were to buy this note, the borrower owes 331 and it sells for 360. So what that means is we would get, if I own that note, I say we, me, whatever, I would get paid 331,000 or 338 and 899. Okay. So I want to make sure when I bid on this note that I'm going to be below that amount so that the return makes sense for me. So I get a nice return on investment. Okay. And then anything above that 331, that goes to the borrower. Okay. So that's not money that I'm going to be able to earn as a note investor when we foreclose. Okay. I can only earn this basically 331, the amount owing on the note. Okay. but I know that I'm never going to own this property, right? There's enough equity here that this is going to sell at the auction and I'm going to get the full balance paid out. And as long as I bought this note at a discount, then I'm going to profit from it. Okay. So that's the one basket I was referring to where there's equity. Now, the other basket is this one over here, the ones where there's not a lot of equity or even negative equity. Okay. So this is a property in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. There's the property there. And the property value as is, current condition is 100,000. Okay. The legal loan balance you can see is 139,000. So the borrower is actually underwater by 40 grand. Okay. So in this case, if I were to buy this note and put it up for auction, I'm going to set my starting bid when I foreclose at 139. But most people aren't going to want to pay 40 grand more than the property's worth at the auction unless they're missing something, right? You'd be pretty silly to pay that much for a property that's only worth 100. Okay. So when I go to foreclose, starting bid's 139, no one's going to bid. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to actually take ownership of this property as the note holder, as the lender. And now that property is mine. Okay. I no longer own just the note. I now own the property. Okay. So in this whole scenario, when you're looking at a note like this, and I put the 80% of value here because this is probably the price an investor would want to pay at the auction, 80, but it's going to probably, I'm going to start the bid at 139. That's the amount owing. Okay. So basically I'm going to take back this property and it's now going to be mine. Okay. So when I'm looking at this kind of a deal, I want to make sure I'm factoring in what my exit strategy is going to be once I foreclose and now own the property. Okay. So if I want to maybe buy it, take it over, and then do a remodel on it and sell it for top market value, then I'm going to want to look at comparable sales and figure out what my as complete value or my after repair value is on that property once it's renovated. And I also better make sure that I have the funds available to put the renos in, right? So I'm going to do a lot more due diligence on this property because I know I'm going to have to rehab it and then sell it off. And I want to make sure that I'm buying this note cheap enough so that when I do the remodel and sell it, I'm going to profit, right? On the other hand, maybe I want to buy this note, foreclose, and then keep this property as a rental, right? So in that case, I want to make sure I get as much information as I can on the property condition because I may have to do some updates to it. And then I want to know what's this property going to rent for because I want to make sure that, again, my return on investment is going to make sense once I rent it out. And then lastly, I might want to just sell it as is, hire a realtor, maybe just get it nice and clean inside and then sell it in its as is condition. And in that case, I want to make sure, again, that I bought the note cheap enough so that when I sell it as is, I'm going to profit and the returns are going to be favorable for what I'm looking for. Or, and then I guess the last exit strategy might be something like creating a new note. So maybe I'll buy the note, foreclose, take the property back, and then owner finance it and then create a brand new note. Okay. So either way, you got to get clear on what your exit strategy is going to be once you take back a property like this so that you're buying that note cheap enough so that you're going to get a nice return once you complete the deal. All right, so I hope that answers your questions. If any of you have been confused about looking at a property or a note and what happens when you look to foreclose and how to run your numbers ahead of time to set your bids on a non-performing note that's probably going to go into foreclosure. If you have any questions, feel free to post them underneath this video or reach out to me. cal@calewing.com is my email. And I'd be happy to answer your questions. And if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to give this video a thumbs up if you like this content, and please subscribe to my channel. And any kind of note investing questions, real estate investing questions, I'm happy to answer for you. So please post them below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.